You need to play Half-Life 1 until you talked about your approach to Half-Life 1. It might come as a surprise, but the original Half-Life 1 was better than Black Mesa. I thought it was an awesome game.
Play Half-Life 1, what the fuck?
Alright, I'll do it. After my video on Half-Life Alyx kind of blew up, thanks for that by the way guys, I appreciate every single view and comment, many of you either couldn't believe or were even slightly offended by the fact that I had never played, or rather finished, Half-Life 1. Some of you wanted me to play Black Mesa, some of you wanted me to play all the expansions, and some of you just wanted me to play good old Half-Life 1. And, well, so I did. For anyone who's interested, I played the version you get when you download Half-Life 1 on Steam today. No mods, no legacy versions, no backward patches or whatever, just the current Half-Life 1 experience. I know there are probably many of you who understandably think that I should have played a different version with mods or whatever, but I'm just a guy trying to squeeze in the time to play a game he really should have played quite some time ago. And it was great. I mean, obviously it was. I knew it was gonna be great. There's a reason Half-Life 1 is considered a monumental success of the art form that is video games. And once I finished it, sat down at my desk to write the script, I wondered, now, what do I even talk about? We all know this game is great. We all know its flaws and strengths. I thought about doing a proper review, but why? Why would I halfway objectively review an almost 3 decades old game that everybody has talked at length about already? I thought about writing something about a specific aspect of the game, like I usually do, for example, the sound design or narrative experience. Usually these things come to me while playing the game, but here they didn't, or when they did, felt not worthy of Half-Life. And then I thought to myself, you guys told me to play it, that I, as a proper Half-Life 2 to a Half-Life Alyx fan, should play it. So, you know what? I'll just talk about what I wrote into my notes while playing, what was interesting, funny, annoying, or whatever in the 15 plus hours I spent in this game. And I'd like for you guys to share your memories, opinions, or whatever about the game or about what I have to say as well. So, here we go. Let's get a big one out of the way first. I got a few comments claiming Half-Life 1 to be a better game than Half-Life 2. I mean, that is just 100% subjective, so sure, I guess, but also no. Half-Life 1 isn't a better game, it is just very different. As someone who dislikes change as much as the next guy, I can see how one would go into Half-Life 2 expecting something very different from the game and therefore be kind of disappointed with what they got. I think Valve, if they had had the technological advancements at the time, would have loved to make Half-Life 1 as story-driven as Half-Life 2. But they couldn't, so it was the sequel that got a much more narrative-driven experience, slowed down in not only movement and action, but also world-building and dialogues and whatever. It is a much more hand-holding and, well, a more modern game. All these things don't make it better or worse, objectively at least, but playing Half-Life 1 to me felt like playing a slightly different genre of game about the universe of another, or the same? I don't know. It's a bit like these card-playing games of The Witcher that tell some odd stories from the universe of a third-person action RPG, though obviously Half-Life 1 and 2 are not nearly as different. Half-Life 2, to me, is more of a sci-fi shooter and less of a horror game than Half-Life 1. The enemies are more sophisticated, and while they are still monsters, often, they are not just brutes in different suits, more and more illustrious figments of the developers' imaginations, but more grounded, subtle, and less in number. While Half-Life 1 is an ever-derailing cascade of shit hitting the fan with a literally otherworldly ending on fleshy microplanets, Half-Life 2 takes a step back, a deep breath, and concentrates on what it deems to be most important. It feels like there are less enemy types, for example, which could also make sense story-wise, as they are not all in one place anymore, but rather spread all over. But the game does not feel like it's emptier for it, just different. Combine technology seems to be more defined and recognizable than Half-Life 1's alien technology, and it's not this and that here and there, but rather becomes a familiar sight with damning implications. What I want to say is, and please do believe me when I say it, that Half-Life 1 is just as great of a game as Half-Life 2, but they are different, quite different to me, and none is greater than the other. While typing all of this, my head was constantly throwing Doom and Prey at me. Both are shooters, both have monsters, both are sci-fi in some way. But one is more fleshy, raw and fun, and the other one is more, well, as I said, sophisticated, narrowed down, and takes itself a bit more seriously. But great, they are both. Alright, time for something more fun. You know what's kinda cool? When technical limitations create something weirdly entertaining. I'm not gonna deep dive into Gold Source's audio system because I have literally zero knowledge on it, but it does feel like environmental sounds had to be quite short and repeated to create ambient sounds and soundscapes, like for example steps, water rushing or machines running. And when ambient sounds are short and repeated, well, they create some kind of music. And Kelly Bailey, the composer and sound designer for every Half-Life except Alex, made damn sure that the sound design fit the music and the other way around. Just listen to these sounds and try to hear the music in them. At first it was distracting to me because I recognized the sound looping and I thought, it's looping again. But then I grew to really like it, and in some cases, for example the health charger, the loop must be intentional, and it is intentionally great. But I do have to say, the sometimes quite musical, song-like soundtrack was a bit off-putting to me. I prefer the more booming, electrical, computery soundtracks in sci-fi, and sometimes I just felt like listening to the radio. And if you're into that, that is fine by me, but it did distract me personally quite a lot. I guess we can all agree that the cultural impact of Half-Life 1 cannot be disputed. 1998, plus or minus a few months or so, was an insane year for video games. Here, take a listen to this list. Tekken 3, Metal Gear Solid, Grim Fandango, Resident Evil 2, Baldur's Gate, Crash Bandicoot Warped, Oddworld Apes Exodus, Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit, Tomb Raider 3, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, all released in 1998, and, well, Half-Life. And while most, if not all of these, have left their lasting impression on video game history, we are here to talk about Half-Lives. Whether it's the way the levels are structured or the world is designed, the story is told or the game is played, so much of it can still be found in modern titles, especially, of course, the ones by Valve themselves. The metal walls and grated floors made me think of Far Cry 1. Having no mission screen flowing through the levels with minimal interruption is almost indispensable for any modern game, and the interactive cutscenes, experienced not as a video but through the eyes of the player, have been in so many first-person games I can't even list them all. And I almost missed this as I played through the game, because I have become so accustomed to games presenting their story in this way that I just accepted this as being normal until I realized how insane it must have been to see the scientist get smashed and dragged away by the tentacles for the first time. As I said in my Half-Life Alyx video, one cannot imagine the immersion of seeing scenes like this play out in VR. And I think that back then, seeing stuff like this in first person must have been a similar feeling. Just as they do today, Valve doesn't throw their players into new situations or gameplay mechanics without teasing them first. While some people in the comment section of my Half-Life Alyx video have determined this strategy to be hand-holding and coddling of their players to not lose their interest, I believe it does much more than that. Yes, of course, easing people into new mechanics will improve their chances of surviving their first encounter with, let's say, headcrab. Sure, if it was multiplayer and they wanted to keep people hooked to the game to sell the newest season pass, making the game easier to keep frustration low makes sense. But in the single-player experience that one has already dumped a few hours into, I think it is more of a world or game-building technique. Especially today, when playing a Valve game, I know that when I see, for example, water being introduced to the gameplay, and then an underwater gun being introduced into the gameplay, that I will quite definitely encounter underwater enemies quite soon. And well, subjectively, you could call this predictable and boring, but if it's well done, which it usually is, I feel, subjectively, that it raises tension, rewrites the rules, and gives me a feeling of, oh god, this can happen now? Believe it or not, I am not always 100% motivated to play the games I do my videos on. There's a difference between being motivated to play a game and being motivated to do a video on said game. But with Half-Life, I really wanted to not only play, but also finish the game from start to finish. Yes, there were times where I was highly annoyed by it and didn't feel the urge to play for like a few days, but that is normal, I think, and not indicative of the quality of the game overall. Interloper, the chapter, for example, just dragged on and on for me. While it is morally and thematically dubious and disturbing, it is just not a lot of fun to play. Zen, before, with the whole island hopping stuff, was so cool, but especially those factories, I guess, were just narrow dark area after narrow dark area, and while it wasn't game-endingly boring, I was happy when it was done. Lacking a modern, not necessarily better, but modern HUD with question markers and texts, maps and checkboxes, I was sometimes a bit lost at what to do. Here now lays a crucial design decision that makes all the difference to my ADHD brain. How do you want me to find out what to do? Because if there is new information scattered across the area, new bits and pieces to be found every few minutes, I stay engaged and interested. But if I just have to search, tediously search for one thing, I lose interest after 3 minutes. This was especially annoying during, I think it was Lambda Core, where I just could not find where I had to go. Turns out the door I had tried before, and that was my way onwards, was just bugged. Besides stuff like that, the game didn't throw me too many curveballs. As I said, I was a bit lost at times, mostly due to the quite repetitive room design of the levels or not that clearly marked interactive items, buttons or whatever. Usually, the world building or just the dialogues from the NPCs told me all I needed to know. But I do have one question though. Do you guys use the companions at all, like the Barneys? Because, I mean, pressing E next to an NPC is hardwired into my gaming skill set, but besides the NPCs you need to open doors, I did not care about using them. Especially in the beginning, there were some tight calls and especially some badly set save points, by me, that made some fights annoying because of low HP and ammo. I could have used companions then, or I could have realized much sooner that you can actually break the crates in the levels. Like, most of them, and they give you health items and ammo. The thought of breaking boxes, especially with my crowbar, a staple of Half-Life, did not cross my mind until I was already 4 or 5 hours in. It was a literal game changer, made it a bit easier to survive, and yeah, well, you can imagine my face when I finally realized. Though I have to say, because of my lack of broken crate items, I was quite often low HP. And throughout the game, there are these little ferocious cunts called headcrabs. No, I love them, you know I'm kidding. Sprinkled all over the levels. And when you're constantly low on HP, these iconic creatures never become an early game critter that you stomp on later, but they stay dangerous, especially in numbers or in the dark. In general, they feel a bit more menacing than in later Half-Lives, especially compared to Half-Life Alyx, because they are just faster and leap further, or at least it feels like it. I talked about Half-Life 1 and 2's relationship in the beginning already, but I want to come back to it. After Half-Life 1's success, and with the pressure of a successor breathing down their necks, Valve quite obviously restructured a lot of the game's story and universe. Not necessarily in the sense of just blatantly changing lore, but by focusing on other aspects of said lore. To me, the most important retcon is the involvement of the Combine during or before the events of Half-Life 1, obviously. What's fun about it is that it isn't necessarily a retcon. We all assume that Valve did not think of the Combine as the masterminds or even just a relevant party while working on Half-Life 1, but maybe they did. They could have decided not to name their Lovecraftian cosmic horror overlords to keep us a bit mystified, or they just didn't think much about them at all. Either way, the Combine are a perfect bridge between Half-Life 1 and 2. I love them as an adversary in all their forms. They are one of my main points of interest in this universe. Finding out about them and their history almost feels like archaeology. The facility in Interloper, where the Vortigons work as slaves, this facility shares so much of its design, layout, and function with the factories of the Combine. It makes me wonder if these are hidden signs of the Combine's involvement, or if it's just, the same developers doing what they do best and think looks good. Well, I know what I prefer. Being this devoid of hubs, cooldown areas, and mission screens, on the one hand, a marvelous technical feat of its time, but on the other, it's also a narrative feature. Instead of having a start, a middle, and an ending, drama, resolve, ups and downs, it just goes down. It just gets worse and worse and worse, more violent, louder and bigger. People die left and right, monsters obviously too, and the game just goes on. You just blew up a lab or scorched an interdimensional being to hell, and the game just goes on. You dive deeper and deeper into the bowels of Black Mesa, finding research no one was ever supposed to see or to morally judge, and the game just goes on. You don't need to be merciful, you don't need to ask questions, you just go on. Deeper, darker, and the furthest away from peace and home probably any human has ever been. And you never come back. Until 20 years later. And maybe, just maybe, 20 years after Half-Life 2 Episode 2 released, the game itself will return, just as Gordon did. I really hope it does. Thanks for watching.